It was a stormy evening in a small town in Oregon. Rain lashed against the windows and the wind howled like a hungry wolf. A lone car struggled through the downpour, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Inside, a weary traveler named Matt shifted in his seat. He had been on the road for days, and the thought of another night in his car was enough to make him shiver. Just then, through the rain, he saw at a beacon of light in the darkness, a small, quaint restaurant tucked just off the highway. The wooden sign outside swung gently in the wind, its paint faded with age. It read, "Linda's Diner." As he pushed open the door, the scent of old grease and damp wood enveloped him. The hostess looked up from behind the counter. Her smile was polite, but her eyes, a faded blue, seemed tired. A bell chimed above the door as he entered. The place was nearly empty. Only a few patrons were scattered across the restaurant, their faces half hidden in the shadows. Matt chose a table by the window, a corner booth, with a wide view of the dark forest behind the diner. "You sure you want to sit there?" the waitress asked, her voice barely a whisper. She seemed hesitant, almost afraid. Matt chuckled, thinking she was joking. "Yeah, that's fine," he said, nodding towards the empty booth. He sat down. The booth groaned softly, as if disturbed from a long slumber. The window glass vibrated slightly, though no cars passed by. Outside, the rain was getting heavier. He took a deep breath and ordered coffee and pie. The waitress disappeared into the kitchen. As Matt settled in, he tried to relax. After a long day on the road, a hot meal and a good night's sleep were all he needed to feel human again. But something was off. It wasn't just the draft from the open window or the creaking walls. It was a feeling, a sense of uneasiness that he couldn't shake. When his coffee arrived, it was cold. The pie sat untouched on the plate, as if it had been served before. And then there was the silence. Not an unsettling silence, but an absence of it. The restaurant was filled with a low hum of voices and the clatter of dishes, yet he felt strangely isolated. He looked around, no one seemed to notice him. They were all lost in their own conversations, their own little worlds. I took a sip of the cold coffee. It was bitter, like old grounds and regret. And then he heard it. At first it was faint, barely a whisper. Then it grew louder, more insistent. "Leave," she said. The word hung in the air, sharp and cold like a winter wind. Matt spun around. No one was there. The booth behind him was empty. Had he imagined it? Was it the fatigue, the isolation, or maybe the cold coffee playing tricks on his mind? He stood up, intending to find the waitress and ask for another cup. But as he turned back, he saw it. The pie plate was empty. The fork had touched every crumb, leaving not a single speck behind. On top of the table, the remains of his coffee sloshed precariously close to the edge, as if someone had lifted the cup to take a final sip. Startled, he pulled out his phone. The camera app glitched. The screen flickered with static. He tried to record, hoping to capture whatever was happening, but the phone just kept switching off. A man at the counter finally spoke. His voice was gravelly, worn smooth by years of hard living. "You sat at her table," he said, his eyes never leaving Matt's. "Who's Matt?" asked, his voice barely a whisper. The man turned to him slowly, as if revealing a secret best left buried. "Linda's. She died in that booth in 1989. Heart attack, right there by the window. She still hates anyone sitting there." Matt felt a chill crawl up his spine. His hand trembled as he reached for his keys. As he walked towards the door, he glanced back one last time. There, sitting in his booth, was a woman. She wore a faded 50s waitress uniform, her hair a cloud of white curls around her head. Her skin was the color of bone, her eyes to black pits. She smiled, but her mouth didn't move. The whisper echoed again, this time right beside him. "Leave." He did. This is scary. This is creepy. This is terrifying. Story time. Once upon a time, in a faraway land of New Orleans, Louisiana, there was a famous Cajun restaurant by the name of Boudreaux's. And what made this place so popular was not only its delicious food and its affordable prices, but also the fact that it was family-owned and operated, and it was very welcoming and had a real homey feel to it. Now, this restaurant had been around for many years. In fact, it was started up by a husband and wife team back in the early 1960s. And throughout the decades, Their children and grandchildren had helped out in the restaurant, and they were now running the place. So if you were ever in the neighborhood and you were craving some jambalaya or some gumbo or some red beans and rice or maybe some crawfish etouffee, well, you knew you could stop on in at Boudreaux's and you'd always get a warm welcome. Except for one table. See, there was one table in the place that nobody wanted anything to do with. In fact, locals refused to go anywhere near that table. And when any new servers got hired on, they were specifically told, whatever you do, never serve table 13 past 9 p.m. But of course, being young and invincible and most likely an atheist, the new servers would laugh and say things like, "Oh, come on, Mr. Boudreaux. There's no such thing as ghosts. Don't try and tell me that some ghost is haunting your restaurant." There was even one new server named Tyler, who was just a college kid working part-time in order to pay for his tuition. And Tyler told his grandpa that ghosts weren't real. And his grandpa just shook his head and said, "All right, Tyler, if you don't believe in ghosts, then maybe you can help us out because we need someone brave enough to sit at that table after 9 p.m. C. Our business is suffering because people are afraid to eat there." "Don't worry, Grandpa," Tyler said, confidently puffing out his chest. "I won't believe in ghosts, just so I can make your business more money, but I'll sit at that table all night if you want me to." Well, Mr. Boudreaux was very grateful for that. And Tyler soon found himself sitting at table 13, all alone. But being a skeptic, Tyler wasn't scared at all. In fact, he pulled out his phone and he started playing a video game. About 30 minutes later, though, a couple walked in, and they asked the hostess if they could sit at a table near the window. The hostess was happy to oblige. But when she turned to show them to a table, she noticed that Tyler was still sitting at table 13. "Oh, sorry," she said. "That table's actually reserved." But the couple insisted that they just wanted a table by the window. So the hostess sighed and said, "Well, sure, but Tyler's going to be done pretty soon, and then you can have it." But the couple just looked at each other and they shrugged. They really wanted a table by the window, so they sat down at table 13. And Tyler smiled politely and waved at them and said, "Welcome to Boudreaux's. How can I help you tonight?" "We're fine, hun," the woman said. "Just bring us some water, would ya? We're waiting for our friends to arrive." Tyler nodded, and he poured them some water. And as he turned to leave, the woman mentioned that there was quite a cold breeze coming from the corner of the room. Tyler just nodded, but he didn't say anything. He didn't want to encourage her. He didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing that she'd scared him. So he just walked out into the dining area, and he poured some water for some other customers. When he returned to their table, the man said, "Hey, Tyler, you wouldn't happen to see any shadows dancing in the corner of the room, would ya?" Tyler forced a smile and said, "Nope, sorry, just you two." The man laughed it off and said, "Yeah, I was just kidding. Thanks, Tyler." It was only another 30 minutes before Tyler had to return to the couple again, this time to take their food order. But while he was walking over to their table, he noticed that the woman seemed very uneasy. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she was staring intently at the corner of the room. He tried to shake it off, though. It must have been something on the floor or something like that. So he asked her if she was okay. She quickly regained her composure and said, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. Sorry, I think I saw a cockroach or something." Tyler nodded understandingly, and he took their order. He then went to the kitchen and shouted out their order to the chef. But when he turned to leave once again, he saw that the woman was staring at the corner of the room. This time, though, the man was standing up, pointing at the corner and yelling, "Oh my God, get away, get away." Tyler rushed over to him and asked, "What's wrong? Is everything okay?" But the woman screamed at him, "Don't come any closer. Stay away from me. Please, 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 please." And then she and her companion abruptly vanished. Tyler rushed over to their table, and he noticed that their plates were untouched and their glasses were still filled with water. Had they gotten up to use the restroom or something? But then he noticed that the glasses were filled with ice water. Ice that had melted during the half hour that he'd spent in the kitchen taking their order. And that's when Tyler remembered the stories about table 13. And that's when Tyler noticed that the CCTV footage for the dining room was directly above their table. And that's when he rushed over to the monitor and he checked the tape. On the screen, he saw the couple enter the restaurant. He saw them walk up to the table and sit down. He watched as they talked to each other. And then they froze. They just sort of stood up and stared at the corner of the room. And he looked closely at the screen, but he couldn't see anything else. Then the camera just flickered and cut out for a few seconds. When it came back on, the couple was gone. They just vanished. Tyler immediately ran to the kitchen, and he told everyone to call the police. But by the time the cops got there, the footage was gone. The camera had apparently malfunctioned and erased itself. The police searched the restaurant and the parking lot, but they found nothing. And Tyler never saw the couple again. In fact, he quit his job at Boudreaux's the next day. But people still go to that restaurant today. And every now and then, late at night, they hear the bell above the door ring, but they don't see anyone walk in. And sometimes they even see a couple sitting at table 13, motionless, eyes wide, pale. When they try to talk to them, they just vanish. Thank you for listening to this episode of Scary. As always, if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe. Also, if you want to hear more creepy stories, I invite you to check out my podcast, which publishes new episodes every Friday. Until then, stay safe. In the heart of Chicago lies a small BBQ restaurant known only to locals. Its name is Charred and Bone. There is no website, there is no phone, only word of mouth. Now, Elise was a food blogger. She was known for seeking out the most exciting underground cuisine. And one day she got a message from an anonymous user on Reddit. It said, if you want something unforgettable, go to Charred and Bone. Order the butcher's special, but don't ask what's in it. Intrigued, Elise decided to check it out. On a foggy Friday night, she found the place. It was dimly lit, its walls adorned with old meat cleavers and yellowed recipes. The only sound was jazz music from a dusty record player. Inside, behind the counter, stood a man. He was a chef, tall and burly, with a stitched-up cheek. He didn't speak. Elise asked for the butcher's special. He only nodded and got to work. For 15 minutes, all Elise heard was the sizzle of the grill and the rhythmic thump of the chef's knife. Then he slid a plate across the counter. It was covered with meat. She could see that much. But what exactly it was made of, she couldn't tell. It smelled strange, metallic almost. Elise took a bite. The meat was tender, rich, almost too rich, like nothing she'd ever tasted. Halfway through the dish, Elise's vision blurred. Her mouth tingled. The room swayed. She stumbled to the restroom, but she opened the wrong door. What she saw made her scream. It was a freezer room, one with hanging limbs. At first, Elise thought they were animal, maybe from some butcher shop in the back. But as she got closer, she realized they weren't. They were human. Each limb had a tag. One read Jason, February 3rd, another, Lena, March 15th. Then she felt a sharp sting at her neck. Elise screamed again, this time into her own mouth. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. Then everything went black. She woke up hours later on a couch outside her apartment. As the sun rose, she checked her phone. It was full of missed calls from her friends. Also tucked into her pocket was a note. It simply said, "You asked, you found out. Don't come back." Shaken but unharmed, Elise tried to write about her experience on her blog, but every time she saved it, the post corrupted. The pictures she took? As the day went on, Elise tried calling the restaurant, but the number had been disconnected. She drove by the location, but there was no restaurant. Charred and Bone was never found again. It's not on any maps. It's not on any local guides. It's like it never existed. But Elise still dreams of the taste, the rich, metallic flavor that lingered long after the meal was done. And she wakes up screaming. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to check out more stories like these.